Welcome back to Girl Talk. I'm now with DUrban from Monster Tree Service, and we're going to talk about all things kind of trees as it relates to summer and hurricane season coming up. So we've got a lot to talk about today.
We do.
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we are heading into summer. We're in the warm weather. You know, things are continuing to bloom and bud and do all those kinds of things. We've got insects that are getting a little more active. So talk to us about what we need to be looking at in our yard.
Yeah, so from a weather perspective, right, the increased heat and the temperature combined with a lack of rain that we've had really plays havoc on trees and shrubs, causes a lot of stress to them. So you need to be watching out for things like wilting leaves, discoloration, leaves that are falling off of the trees and shrubs prematurely.
Okay.
That's a sure sign that they're lacking nutrients and lacking moisture. And then as far as the insects go, they're becoming very active.
Yes.
Again, they have the same type of stress factor on the plants, trees, and shrubs. So you want to be watching out for leaves that look like they've been eaten back. Some insects will leave almost like a white coating on the leaf. So you can easily walk around your property to check out what's happening with the plants and the trees and contact somebody to come out and give you a professional opinion on how to treat them.
Yeah, well, that was just my next question. Obviously, for the lack of water, proper irrigation is important. But what, for the insects, what do we do to handle that?
Yeah, so there's different treatments specific to the different insects. A lot of pesticides are in use, eco-friendly pesticides as well. And also there's a fertilization that can happen by injections into the soil system so that the protection actually comes in through the root system.
And that is interesting that you mentioned eco-friendly and things like that, because I do think people are more and more concerned about the chemicals that they're putting on their lawns or their trees or their shrubs, anything.
Absolutely.
And so tell me a little bit about the options that are there in terms of fertilizer and pesticides that really aren't the harmful Roundup and things that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, so with Roundup being in the focus, there's been a big focus on making the chemicals that are applied to the plants and trees much more eco-friendly, pet-friendly, human-friendly, so that they don't have an impact on anybody else's health and they don't have an impact on the surrounding areas.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk maybe about pruning and things like that, because people go out in their yard and maybe things are overgrown, they haven't done it in the winter, but now they're back and wanting to make things look really pretty. Is there a schedule that they should be cognizant of in terms of, we don't want to cut something back right now because that's the wrong time to do it, or it's actually the right time to do it? How do we know about that? Yeah,
so right now as we're getting into the summer season, a good time to focus on your palm trees is in late June, early July timeframe. That's when the fronds are growing and the old fronds are dying off. So it's a good time to manicure them back and allow room for the new fronds to develop. The pruning itself has to be done very carefully, because if you over prune a tree, it can have a detrimental effect on its health. I've seen many cases where people do what they call top pruning, which is basically cut the top out of a tree to control its growth. But actually the worst thing you can do in terms of manicuring a tree, because what happens is the tops die out, the wood that's exposed becomes a scar tissue it doesn't allow the nutrients to come in from the leaves that were previously there.
Okay, so don't just grab your chainsaw and go crazy. Call somebody who knows what they're talking about so they do it the right way.
Right.
And let's also talk about people who might be wanting to remove trees at this time. They're doing some landscaping in their yard and they want to remove trees. I know that every community here has different rules on what you can and cannot remove. So talk to us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so we have a trained arborist on staff. He's certified. His name's Paul Morano. He goes out and meets with customers to help them through their tree projects. And he can help them guide them through the process of the permitting, because you're not allowed to just go out and take down whatever tree you want to, just because it's impacting your vision.
You don't happen to like it.
You just don't happen to like it, right? So usually there's a health assessment of the tree or a danger assessment of the tree that goes along with that. And he'll work along with the arborists within the communities or within the towns to make sure that assessment is done correctly. And then the permitting process, we actually work along with the customers. We prefer to have the customers go to the township or to their community because they have the closer relationship there. But if they're running into issues, we'll do that as well. We'll also schedule things like the surveying of the property for utilities to make sure
Right.
that we're not impacting any utilities
Right.
in the space.
Yeah. So much to think about.
There is.
You know, there really is. So let's talk for the last minute or so here about hurricane season, because it's upon us again.
Right.
And so I know you've talked before on the show, but you know, just a little reminder, what should we be looking at in our yard so that if we were to happen to be hit by a storm, we might mitigate our damages?
Yeah. So there's a few things to look at. One obvious one is there any dead wood in the trees that's overhanging your house that if there was a strong wind, it could come down and damage your property? It's far less costly to deal with that than it is if it comes down and goes through your roof.
Right.
Insurance deductibles are pretty high, especially if there's a named storm.
Right.
Other things to look for is have the trees shifted at all. So you can look at the base of the tree and tell whether the roots are beginning to become exposed.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. And again, we have an arborist that could come out and help you do that kind of assessment.
So let's talk about lead time, and because I know you said how busy you are, and of course that's great. We want you to be busy,
Right.
but we also want to maybe to use your services. So if somebody is in need of you, what kind of a lead time are we talking about to get an appointment?
Yeah, so we do our appointments within a couple days.
Okay.
So we get a phone call, we'll schedule our appointments no more than 3 or 4 days
Excellent.
in advance. The issue becomes scheduling all that work once we do have it in place. Right now, we're probably 3 weeks out.
Okay.
But we also prioritize work. If there's a serious issue that somebody's dealing with,
Sure.
we shift work around to make that happen. Not everybody's happy all the time, but we try to make them as happy as we can.
Well, I think that's very important that if you have a tree that's going to come down in about 5 minutes, you take that
We're
as a
there,
priority. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Well, thank you, Dennis. It's always good to see you, and it's always fantastic information. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you being with us for Girl Talk, and we'll see you next time.